first this hour.
This was a serious departmental error. It was in clear breach of strict data protection protocols, and it was one of many data losses relating to the ARAP scheme during this period.
Let us be totally frank here. This is one of the great failings of the British state in modern times. You think of the infected blood scandal or the post office Horizon debacle, even Hillsborough. This, I think, ranks incredibly high as a dereliction of duty that really is life or death for thousands of people at a cost of as much as £7 billion. And worst of all, they sought to hide it. Successive governments, Tories and Labour, sought to keep the truth from you that thousands of Afghans and their families are being brought to Britain because of an email sent by a soldier in London that they should not have sent. And you thought you couldn't trust the state any less. Now, good people make mistakes. As you know, I've worked at the highest levels of the British state. There are good people trying their best. But man alive, that the British state potentially compromised the lives of tens of thousands of people who had helped us in a failed war, and then accepted them into the UK, some of whom I read had been rejected initially as part of schemes to bring Afghans to the UK because of security concerns, at a cost of hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, and attempted to hide it from the people who were paying for all of it, us, the demos. That is, to my mind, unforgivable. We weren't asked about this. We weren't even informed about it. It is unforgivable. How can we trust you? How do you expect us ever to trust you? Because yes, there are mistakes made, sometimes very serious mistakes, but for the love of God, you teach your children to fess up to mistakes, but not the grown-ups in the room. At the top of the British state, they apparently get a free, unaccountable pass to spend billions of pounds that we don't have and try and hide it from you. It is utterly incompetent. It is utterly contemptuous. Sir Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, who brought the injunction, says he makes no apology for doing so, saying it was his first job to protect those Afghans from the Taliban. Well, with respect, what happened to the responsibility to tell British people what their money is being spent on? We'll speak to the current Defence Secretary live on the programme in the next 50 minutes. Sir Nicholas Kay joins us, former British ambassador to Afghanistan between 2017 and 2019. Thanks for coming on the programme, Sir Nicholas. Your thoughts on this complete farrago?
Thanks, Tom. I think you've summarised it very well. It clearly was, as the current Defence Secretary said in Parliament yesterday, it has many words, a cock-up of immense dimensions. And I think it is absolutely right that now it is out in the open that there should be a very thorough scrutiny and look at how this has happened and why it happened. And I think also we should stand back and look actually at everything we have done post the summer of 2021 in terms of resettling Afghans here. There have been numerous schemes. There's been this MoD-led scheme, the ARAP scheme. There's been an ACRS scheme led by the Home Office and Foreign Office. I think, now is the time really just to stand back and say, what were the policy decisions at the highest level that were taken that determined this? What were the operational decisions? How tactically was it implemented? What was central government doing? It was divided. The MoD, the Ministry of Defence, is not expert in judging immigration claims and rights to enter this country. Soldiers, on MoD desks, way outside their comfort zone in terms of dealing with sensitive spreadsheet issues of public disclosure, etc., etc. Have a look at all of this. Did we get the right people? If not, why not? How much has it all cost? How was it funded? There's controversy about the funding that came, from the overseas development assistance budget.
Well, to your point,
lots of questions. I think it is about time that we stood back and had a look at it.
On that, do you think that a public inquiry is needed?
It's running through my mind that it looks like to be the case. I mean, I'm not a fan. Many people are not fans of public inquiries that cost millions of pounds and take years to happen. Maybe there is something that can be done less than that, a comprehensive review, maybe judge-led, but it is urgent. As you say, billions have been spent, but above all, human lives have been affected.
Well, you mentioned about did we get the right people, and the assessment being made of the people who were applying, whether it's through the ARAP scheme, which was the sort of publicly available, or this secret scheme that we now know about. And it's reported in a number of papers that the error of sending the email has led to thousands of Afghans being flown here who would not have been eligible for sanctuary. So, Nicholas, is there a question mark here about whether the security checks done on the people that were brought over after that email error were robust enough?
I think there's two aspects to that question, Tom, really. I mean, first is, were people brought here who would not have been eligible under the ARAP scheme? I think ministers have said clearly that is the case.
And they wouldn't have been eligible
because in order to preserve their safety, having had their data spread across the internet.
Sorry, Nicholas, why? In your opinion, why would they not have been brought in under ARAP?
Presumably because their links to the UK armed forces were not strong enough to justify the MOD saying, yes, these people are in danger. They became in danger after they were named in the data breach as applying for the ARAP scheme. So a judgment was made that they were at risk and brought. Now, security checks, I assume, again, this would need to come out in further reviews and scrutiny, but I would assume robust security checks were done for these people in the same way as they were done for people judged eligible for ARAP.
Well, let's find out. We'll speak to the Defence Secretary a little later. Thank you for coming on. Sir Nicholas Kay, former British ambassador to Afghanistan between 2017 and 2019. Listening to that, Rakib Ehsan, social policy analyst and independent expert on social integration. Thanks for coming on, Rakib. I see reports in the newspapers today that ministers were warned that about 10% of the new arrivals into the UK from Afghanistan under this secret scheme will end up homeless.
Well, I think that if I had to design a scandal which could do significant damage to trust in the British state, it would be this one, Tom. Firstly, we had the spectacular data breach, and then the response to that was ultimately designing this secret relocation scheme for Afghans and then putting in place a superinjunction so it's not subject to public scrutiny and discussion. So it's no surprise to me now this superinjunction has been lifted that there are concerns that it might spill over into public disorder. Especially we saw the events last summer, Tom, where we saw the violent disorder. Now, there seems to be a link because it has been reported that 15 of the 20 primary hotspots for the disorder, the local authorities, it was the top 20% of local authorities in terms of the number of asylum seekers which are being supported and Afghan resettlement arrivals. So I think we have a very serious problem on our hands here.
Do you not think, though, that the majority of people will feel a degree of sympathy and respect for the Afghans that have been brought over, not least because it's not their fault that their details were leaked, but also because some of them will have served alongside British soldiers in Afghanistan, even in a failed war?
I think quite possibly. I think that what we're doing, we're talking about the numbers here. I believe that in the region of nearly 20,000 have been resettled. Now, of course, I think that established communities, if they know those who are being resettled assisted the armed forces during their time in Afghanistan, then of course they'd want them to be treated with dignity and respect. But I think ultimately we have to be honest here about the asylum seekers in this case, how some are behaving. I think that needs to be absolutely clear that there have been tensions there in terms of the fact that even though they may have been involved with assisting the armed forces, that's not to say that they're naturally, culturally and socially compatible in terms of living in British
So you would have,
democracy.
You're coming down on the side perhaps of saying even with the data breach, would you have wanted to accept 24,000 Afghan soldiers and their families?
Well, I think that what we needed to do, we needed to have been able to discuss it in public. And I think that from my perspective, coming from an integration and cohesion background, just because you have individuals who may have helped our armed forces, that's not to say that they will integrate seamlessly into mainstream British society, especially in areas, to be honest, which aren't particularly diverse to begin with. So, but the problem is, because there was a superinjunction in place, I understand that the security documents, we couldn't even talk about these problems. And I think that will be a real issue as we look into the complexities of this from an integration and cohesion perspective.
Rakib, appreciate you coming on. Rakib Hassan, social policy analyst and independent expert in social integration. It is jaw-dropping. Absolutely jaw-dropping, this. You couldn't find an issue to destroy trust in the government or the state, institutions of the state, more than I think this one. Not only were people's lives put at risk by an error, a soldier sent an email that he shouldn't have sent or she shouldn't have sent, but then the secrecy around bringing in thousands and thousands of people. I guess the question is, what would you have liked them to have done? Now that the email's been sent, the list is out there, people's names and addresses, their families' names and addresses are out there, the Taliban are jumping up and down with joy about it. What should the British government have actually done differently here? Because Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary, is making the case in the papers today that he did the right thing. He makes no apologies for it. Really? Really? You make no apology for going behind the backs of Parliament, of the people, for bringing in thousands and thousands of people, some of whom may not have been fully security checked, some of whom the papers report might not have been eligible for sanctuary in the first place. Did they make the right decision?